intro music playing.
All
We're on
right.
Facebook.
Oh,
Say good morning,
okay.
everybody.
Right. Wasn't expecting that.
Morning, world. We're listening to music. You can't hear it, but we are. It is. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the 425 show. I'm your host, Nicole Mangina with Windermere Real Estate. Today's real estate update. We have some stats that came out this week. Windermere does them every month for the month before. We will have them on the website after the show, NicoleMangina.com/podcast. But some interesting statistics are out. 54% of homes are still selling in 15 days or less, which means things are still selling, but you gotta price it right. You gotta make sure it looks good. The super interesting part is prices have gone up 2% from this time last year, so we'll call it even, right? 2%, tiny bit, but interest rates are down 0.75%, which is huge. As a general rule, every 1% reduction in interest rate gives you 10% more buying power. For the same, if you're looking to keep your monthly payment the same, you can buy 10% more house. So, you know, for instance, right now the average price is $850,000 versus $831,000 this time last year. However, the payment's $283 less a month, all because of the interest rate. So it's always interesting to kind of think about that and then how that plays into, you know, whether you're buying or selling. So if you are thinking about doing something, have questions, I always invite you to reach out. You can reach me via email, Nicole@NicoleMangina.com. And without further ado, we will dive into today's show. We've got a really important and lively topic for you today. We've got some wonderful ladies joining us. We have Valerie, Allison, and Vanessa from Balance in Mind with the Lake Washington Schools Foundation. How are you this morning, ladies?
We're doing great. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited because this is an important topic, and it's one that's coming up more and more. I've got teenagers. It's all about mental health, and there's a lot going on right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We have started working in Balance in Mind out of having personal experience with mental health challenges with our kids, but also we have had community events that have affected us.
Yeah, we lost quite a few kids last year to suicide. One of them being my daughter's, one of her best friends. And so that really got us going. Vanessa's kind of got the ball going with trying to get the word out about that youth mental health struggles happen, that it's real.
A lot.
And seeing the impact that these suicides have on schools, on our own children. But as Val said, our own personal experience, my daughter has anxiety, severe anxiety last year, and depression, still struggles with it, but have found the right resources that, you know, she's doing great now. And so there's hope for, you know, parents and kids who are struggling through this, that they can change, you know, that things can improve. But we have to get the word out there that this is for real.
It is. Well, and nationally, they're calling suicide an epidemic. If you look at the statistics, suicide is the second leading cause of death for 10 to 14-year-olds as well as 15 to 24-year-olds.
Oh, wow.
And that is unimaginable given when we were growing up. You know, this is, I think, taking a lot of us back that are parents, because we didn't realize that this was an issue, and maybe it wasn't an issue when we were growing up, but it's definitely an issue now. And the statistics in Washington State are similar to those nationwide. Even within King County, the data is frightening. It's the leading cause of death of people in Washington State, teens from, I think it's 12 to 17.
Wow.
And you think it starts in high school, because that's when you hear most about it, but it's showing up younger and younger. And actually 425 Magazine had a great article earlier this spring about Odell Middle School in Bellevue. And in the first 2 months of the 2018-19 school year, they had 69 suicide interventions. And we're not singling out
goodness.
Odell because this is actually fairly consistent with what we're hearing in the other schools.
Wow.
And-
I never would have guessed
Right?
that.
You tend to
Most
think,
people don't. We were shocked.
we
I
were
mean,
shocked.
Yeah.
And it's showing up earlier and earlier. And one of the things that I think we've all learned from our personal experience is that in elementary kids, they experience anxiety and depression too, but it just looks so different.
It's very
Yeah.
It's like headaches that you can't find a reason for, stomach
Stomach.
aches that you
Oh,
can't find a
It's
reason for.
avoidance.
Right.
Yeah,
Behavioral changes.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so we tend to live in this bubble where we think our kids are, because we're engaged, we're aware, we tend to think our kids are all going to be fine. And I know personally, I missed a lot of those warning signs.
Sure.
So one of the things that we want to make sure is that we actively communicate with parents and that we can help people before their family is in crisis.
Yeah, well, right. Well, I think that's so important for
Yeah.
sure.
And we're not experts on this in any way. I mean, the reason why we came about the way we did is because we've all hands-on experience and are still learning and make mistakes, and we want parents to know that you're going to make mistakes through this and supporting your kids, but you have to talk to your kids about it. You have to be open and start the dialogue. Let them know you care. Let them know you're going to support them in any way. So I feel like we're doing all the talking.
Oh gosh. I'm usually the one talking over everybody, so I'm trying to hold back a little bit.
But she has the beautiful voice.
Well, what are some of the signs? What are some of the things that we should be looking for as parents?
You know, it's a really difficult time at the moment because it can present in such different ways. From elementary school, as Val had previously discussed, it could just be trying to, I'm having trouble at school, or I've got a stomachache, or I want to avoid something.
Right.
To in middle school and boys present so differently to girls.
Oh, right.
And so I've even noticed, even from a year, from my 13-year-old, how he has changed so much to always wanting to hang out and be with us. Now he's just asking me where I can drop him, and he just wants to be with his friends, and so it's a little bit harder to have those connections. So I always try to at least have plenty of food in the house, and the boys, because that's what their motivator is. And I think this is one of the other key things that we've found, and as we've been going through this, is we are supporting our kids' friends as well. Many of our kids' friends can't talk to their parents, don't feel comfortable talking to their parents. So at least if they're talking to a peer or another adult, we can at least try and help navigate back to their parents, or make suggestions on where they could perhaps get some help. Because a lot of people, I can't even tell you how many parents have said, that is not my kid. This is hormone, it's teenage life,
It's an age and a
it's
stage.
an age and a stage.
Because it's very hard to delineate
Right,
between
I
those.
bet.
because they're changing so much at this age. But you can look for things like if their academics suddenly drop, and they've consistently been a B-level student and they're a D. Okay, there's a flag. Any of these things are taken individually, could be other things, but if you look at them in the set of whole things, if their grades start dropping, they start missing school repeatedly, they just want to stay in their room all the time.
They don't want to go out. They're
Don't
on
wanna
their phone
go
all
out.
the time.
They
Crying.
aren't talking to their friends.
Crying a lot, talking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of information out there, and I know we gave you some links.
Sure.
National Institute of Mental Health has some great warning signs to look at, as does NAMI. And then there's local resources that have warning signs as well. Crisis Connections is a local one. But there's information out there to educate yourself. I think I'd like to put a plug in for one program that we all took, is Youth Mental Health First Aid Training.
Okay.
And in fact, so we've all been certified in that. And while that sounds a little scary and daunting, it is in fact an incredibly empowering class to take. It's an 8-hour class, and you learn about the warning signs, and then you have to role play. If someone, daughter's
frightening.
child is contemplating suicide and you're role playing, and there's something really hard about actually having
Oh,
to
I
use
would
the
think
words.
so. Yeah.
Asking that question.
Yeah.
Are you thinking of hurting yourself, or
Mhm.
you know,
Do
even
you have a
worse,
plan?
Do you have a plan? And that's it. Those few words are very powerful. And as a parent, saying that to your child is terrifying to even think about. But
Or
it's,
to their friends, and all
or-
of us
yeah.
have been in that situation where we've actually had to use the training
We
that we
have.
got. Now, the
How do you
training
really know?
doesn't make you an expert, it just helps you triage and get them to the right resources.
Mhm.
Okay,
Mm.
that's
Yeah.
good to know. I mean, and I think, yeah, that's gotta be a hard question to ask. But a powerful
Absolutely.
one,
Because what if they say yes? What do you
Mm.
do?
right.
So, you know, in this training, we learned, again, we're not the experts,
Mm-hmm.
but we're there to say, how can I help you? Here's where you can go to get help, you know.
And if they do say yes, you call the National Suicide Prevention Hotline, and they have people that will walk you through what to do to help support that. In fact, one of the things that I learned is you can just call them if you want to talk to them in advance of any problem.
But even just to get advice to help someone
Yeah.
else who might be struggling.
Yeah,
Mhm.
The
sure.
majority of people who find themselves in this space are in pain. They want the pain to end. They don't necessarily want to take their life by suicide. They just want help, and it's and I'm not saying that's everybody, but I think the important thing is being comfortable to have that hard conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And to, as you said, Vanessa, have those conversations way before it hits the
Mm.
crisis point.
Mhm.
Because, you know, suicide is your last resort. But
Right.
you can be anxious or unhappy for a long time. And that's where we want to help people get resources
Mm-hmm.
and just recognize that this is
Mm.
something all of our youth are dealing with, whether it's extreme enough to be a depressive disorder or an anxiety disorder, or suicide is, you know, they're still dealing with the stress of being a teen.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, and one of the things that Balance in Mind, why we started, was to help fill the gaps of what Lake Washington School District provides, to educate parents through all of our talking with professionals, through teachers, through counselors, that parents are the key to educating them first, because they're the ones modeling what, how to talk, how to treat themselves, how to help themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're helping themselves, those kids are learning, okay, maybe counseling is a good idea.
Sure.
Maybe medication if that's the right route. Meditation. I mean,
Yeah.
there's so many
Whatever
different
it
things.
is.
Whatever it works for them, if the parents are modeling that, then the child is seeing
That
that.
it's okay.
That it's
And
okay.
In a
right.
perfect world, mental health and wellness should be treated no differently to a physical ailment. You've got a broken arm, you need to get it fixed. You have some
Yeah.
rehab, it gets better.
Mhm.
Mental health should be treated. I know it's not, because there's still so much stigma attached to it,
Mhm.
but it hopefully will be soon so openly discussed that it's just not a big deal anymore.
Right.
Right. It does feel though like the whole topic of just going to see a counselor it's become more common. It feels
Yes.
like that's less something like you have to hide
Right.
than
Yes.
it was before. Again, if you're just tuning in today, we're talking about youth and teen mental health. We have the ladies from the Lake Washington Balance in Mind Foundation here that works for the school district, but we will have links on the website after the show that apply for no matter where you are at. These are not just Lake Washington School District resources. So if you go to Nicole Mangina /podcast after the show, we will definitely have all of that information. I was on your website yesterday looking at some things, and one of the statistics that really struck me is something like 14% of mental health issues show up before 14 years old.
Mhm.
I think it's 50%.
Or
Yeah.
50%,
Yeah.
show up before someone's 14 years old. So, you know, certainly suicide is the that's the most extreme, but there's a
Right.
lot of room on that continuum for things
Absolutely.
to start manifesting at a very early age, and for us as parents to
Right.
be as aware and engaged. And it is, it's hard, right? You know,
It
I know our
is.
boys we're not super communicators in our house.
Yeah, well, and I think boys too are generally a little harder to connect with in that respect.
Sure.
You know, and one of the things that we talk about is that mental health is not a choice. I mean, it is something that happens. It can be genetic, it can be situational, and it's, you know, sometimes I think parents say, well, my child uses the word anxious all the time. I don't think they're even anxious. Or, you know, even teachers have said, kids use the word anxiety all the time. And, you know, it's just this word these days. It doesn't even mean anything. And
I think it might mean something.
it's very real.
Although
Yeah.
anxiety is a tough one because, you know, as parents, we worry about our kids when they say anxious, and we know what being anxious means. But I think sometimes we go a little too far overboard with accommodating the anxiety, because there's healthy anxiety,
absolutely.
right? Coming in
Absolutely.
today, talking on the radio, I'll admit,
Wow,
I was
right.
It's not my
anxious.
natural habitat, but
You're doing
right?
amazing.
That's
Absolutely.
a healthy anxiety.
Right.
Getting anxious
Yeah.
before tests. There is a level that is
they've got to build the
healthy there.
resilience to
Sure,
be
and the
successful.
tools to manage
Yeah.
that. Absolutely.
Right.
And avoiding that is just going to exacerbate it, not help it.
right.
Right. One of the things that we're seeing as a trend nationwide and also in our own state and community is an emphasis on social and emotional learning. And
I love
this
that.
is huge.
Important.
Yeah.
These are the things that help you learn how to make good decisions, help you learn how to make connections with people, help you manage your life. You know, these are the skills you need to be a successful person going forward, and they also help in mitigating some of the stressors that our teens are going through. So if they know, you know, what they want to do, and they feel confident about themselves, and they know failing is part of life, they're much less likely to, you know, to get overwhelmed.
Sure.
And this gives them some protective factors against all the stressors that exist.
So I think what is really heartening is the school districts in our area are placing a bigger emphasis on
Much bigger.
SEL training within the schools and doing assemblies around it. And so we want to try and do some more training and support for parents around that as well. So
Great.
if their kids are coming home saying, I've learnt these new skills, or let's talk about this, the parents feel confident to be able to have that conversation. So we are seeing a shift with the school districts in our areas to do some more of, let's call them workshops or training in this
Sure.
area, which I think will be a big difference. Life has changed from when we grew up.
Drastically.
You'd come home from school, you'd play with the kids in the neighbourhood, you'd come home when the lights came on for dinner, you'd sit around and talk with your family, you'd maybe watch TV, do homework and go to bed. We're not on our phones, we're not scheduled within an inch of our lives with sports. Oh, I know from my own kids, if something is cancelled, they go, oh my gosh, what am I going to do now?
Right.
Or it doesn't matter, I haven't seen him for ages, we've been Snapchatting, or we've been, I don't even know what they do anymore because I'm old now, according to
I think
them.
Snapchat's still a thing.
I think
Facebook
that's
is.
a thing.
Facebook is not a thing.
Snapchat
No, that's
is a
just
big-
for the
but
mums,
Snapchat
they
is a
told me.
thing.
Instagram is big.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
there you
Instagram
go.
and
Yes,
Snapchat,
Instagram.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So they just communicate differently. They're not playing out in the street with the neighbourhood kids and learning how to negotiate and navigate through the younger ones or the older ones or who's the toughest in the playground. They're not having that experience in the playgrounds at school anymore
Yeah.
because middle school and high school don't really have any downtime other than that.
Well, and they're allowed to have their phones at school, and that
Oh my
makes me
gosh.
Thank
crazy.
you. That is a huge.
I was so
thing.
disappointed in that when
Me
we
too.
got to
Middle school, I could not
Yeah.
believe it.
I feel like that's an epic fail on the school.
And we've
district.
started that conversation in the
Yeah.
schools
Mhm.
about that because that's so unnecessary.
Oh, and one of the things we should have actually mentioned at the beginning is that we are a group, you're hearing 3 of us today, but there's 10 of us.
Oh, yes.
Oh my
Sorry.
gosh.
And we have a number of mental health professionals as well as, you know, people that are working in various aspects. And again, going back to social and emotional learning and cell phones, going back to social emotional learning, the state of Washington just had a work group release benchmarks, indicators, and standards for social emotional learning. One of the women in our group was involved in that. And it goes to helping parents coach their kids. As Vanessa was saying, you need to, as a parent, in addition to everything else we do, we need to coach them on social emotional learning, and there's some tools on the website.
Oh, I love that.
And if parents aren't feeling confident to approach their kids, they're not going to do it. I mean,
Right.
we don't. It's very hard to feel confident as parents. Or at least for me, I'm constantly doubting what I'm doing as a parent, you know, and you want to do the best thing you can, but sometimes we don't step into the role we should because we're intimidated or scared about what's going to happen if I start this conversation. So
Sure.
the more education, the more opportunity for these parents to hear, you know,
And for it to be a community effort. The schools
Right.
can't be the only place that kids are hearing about
Right.
social emotional learning or anxiety and depression or whatever else. It's got community in terms of parents, also in terms of like sports groups and boys and girls clubs. Those are all some avenues by which kids can learn and have the skills supported.
Absolutely. When I think as parents, for us to be reminded that we just kind of have to keep at it. You know, I don't know about you ladies, but I know with my boys, I'll try and have the conversations. I usually get the eye roll and they kind of get up and go in the other room.
right.
Because mom wants to talk about feelings.
That's true.
But every now and then they'll respond. But, I just have to keep at it. And I think it's good to remember, too, that, even for us as adults, mental health takes, like, constant work and
Right.
effort and
It
attention,
absolutely
just like
does.
going to the gym does, right? I know even for me as an adult, if I'm on social media too much, when everybody else is on really fabulous vacations and I'm not,
It's
Right.
all
Are you
FOMO, and I
tra-
can tell you they're all miserable. They're just doing it
right.
to be spiteful.
Well, or it's
It's
just
the one highlight of the vacation.
yes, the
Yeah.
whole like meltdown up before that or after.
Yeah.
But there's all kinds. You watch the news too much, or we can all have our things that can, even as adults, you kind of get a little spiraled on whatever, right? You've got to remember, okay, these are the things that bring me
And
back.
that is such an important point. Taking care of yourself and
Yeah.
self-care, finding things that give you joy
Right.
is so vital because, as my daughter keeps telling me, Mom, you can't take care of us if you're not taking care of yourself.
Which
Good
is
for
true.
her.
And to be honest, if you see that your child is struggling and they are totally resistant to talking to you or going and seeing a professional about it, you go and see someone.
Yeah.
You go and talk to someone so you get the skills and confidence to be able to have that discussion. And then when they see that you're trying, they will then generally turn around and go and speak with someone. So again, it's getting the tools for yourself.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah.
Because kids don't want to talk about this stuff.
And it's
Right.
hard as a parent when you see your child, you know that they're dealing with anxiety that is
Right.
not productive anxiety. It's veered into something else, or they're depressed, but they don't recognize it. And even within kids, there's this shame still.
Sure.
It might be better, but you don't tell your
Or
friends
admitting
that you're
weakness.
depressed
A lot
because
of
it's
these-
weak.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
weak.
Yeah.
These academically driven kids won't admit they're feeling pressure and anxiety because it's a weakness. And
All their friends are getting A's, and
Yeah. Yeah.
Which, by the way, they're not, but
they're not,
they're not.
for the most part.
or they're so stressed that
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
hide in their room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's why we're hoping with our focus on, let's call it youth mental wellness.
Sure.
Being able to partner with the Lake Washington Schools Foundation, who are already looking after our students with things like Pantry Pack, Find Your Fit, which is the college program that they run. This is really nice and complementary to some of their goals that they've got happening for the next 12 months as well. So it's a nice fit.
Absolutely. And again, we'll have links to all of this on the website after the show. But if you happen to be in a different school district, I would imagine that, a lot of different school districts have similar programs. So I would highly encourage you to either reach out or get involved with your school district because
Or
it's
start
happening.
one.
Or start one. There you
If
go.
you don't.
Be the leader, be the change.
Right.
because it is a really, really important topic. I think it has been this whole time, since the beginning of time, but it seems like it is absolutely becoming more and more.
It is.
And more.
And it is treatable. That's one of the things that we
And I
want
think that is the
There's
biggest
hope.
message
Yeah.
to get
Yeah.
out. Like this, wherever you're at today is not where you need to be for the rest of your
No.
life. There is
And
so much that you can do to affect that.
We have personal stories there. My daughter was struggled with major depression for the past 2 years through therapy and medication when that was deemed appropriate. It has made a huge difference. She graduated from high school and is off pursuing her modeling career. But
Fabulous.
these were things that in no way would we have anticipated 2 years ago, because that was the dark days. So I think as a personal story, I just want to say it does get better.
Oh,
It
that's
takes
beautiful.
a lot of
Absolutely
work,
does.
but it does get better.
It does.
And
It's, yeah.
Every time we talk about this with people, it doesn't matter where we are, I keep hearing enlightening stories where people have been in exactly the same shoes as Val or Alison. Their kids are now graduated, they're headed off to college, or they've gone down another path, which again is totally fine. Life will still be successful if you don't get into your dream college at
Absolutely.
this point of time.
Right.
Or, there are many different paths to success. So it is.
And most people have taken many of those paths.
Absolutely.
And you just
Yeah.
don't know that about them
I
as
hear
your
you change
success
your career
stories.
2 to 3 times now in your life. It's not job for life.
No,
when we were growing
probably
up.
even more the younger,
Probably.
Yeah.
for younger kids and stuff. Yeah.
One of the things I told my daughter when we were in the thick of our struggles, that talk to your friends about this. Let them know what's happening for you. And even now, I say to her, the best gift you can give is share your story with people, to let them know, especially your friends, especially new friends, or any community you're talking with. Let them know, here's what I went through, because that makes it so much more valid for the next person
And
who's
relatable.
and relatable, that there's we
And it's
can get better.
It's freeing for them as well.
Absolutely.
I know once my daughter started talking publicly about it, she was like, yes, I'm kind of owning this.
It's very
Vulnerability
healing.
is a powerful thing. Makes me
Yeah.
think of, I'm sure of you all watched the new Brené Brown.
Oh, she's
Yeah.
my new best
Yeah.
friend. Yeah.
So she's a
Your new best friend.
I
She
made all
doesn't know
my
it yet.
family. She doesn't know it yet. Renee, I'm calling you. No, I made all my family watch that, and it is so true that honesty will seriously
Yeah.
set you free.
Absolutely.
And I think, as you mentioned earlier, I know that Issaquah School District, the Bellevue School District, and the Lake Washington School District are having open conversations and doing more in their schools with this.
That's
So
sweet.
we are wanting to help as we can on the other side with parent education. A lot of this isn't us reinventing the wheel either. All of these resources are already out there. People just don't know about it.
I
Right.
know. Well, thank you for joining us on the show today to help share that,
Thank
because I think
you.
it's so important. Again, we've been talking about youth and teen mental health. We will have all the links on the website after the show, NicoleMangina.com/podcast. Thanks for joining us today, ladies, and we'll see everybody next week.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for having
Bye.
us.